All right, we're here. The flood, 2026. The beast rises from the sea. Let's dig deep. We're going back to part one. I want to re-emphasize this sign. We're going to need this as ammunition as we go forward. We've got to have this in our memory data bank. It's very important to understand all of these signs because this is where it all starts. So let's let's dig into it. Excuse me. Let's dig into this sign. First, this is for those of you who are unfamiliar with the Mazzaroth. Let's start there first. If you're just beginning this type of work, or you just come to this channel and you don't know what the Mazzaroth is, or you have a very small understanding of it, then I'm going to suggest that you go to my Mazzaroth 101 series and begin there. Um, this work in decoding all these signs takes at least a basic understanding of the Mazzaroth and how it works. And if you don't understand that, then you're going to be confused. So if you're just beginning to grasp what we're doing here, it's best to go through that Mazzaroth 101 series. At least get the first two videos under your belt, and then begin to watch the other videos because they'll make a lot more sense. You need to have at least a basic understanding of what we're doing and how this works and why we're doing what we're doing and how this connects to scripture and how this is the Bible in the stars. So that's where we're going to start today, is by looking at these signs in the heavens, and we're going to be connecting all the dots. And for all of you who have been watchmen and watching these signs develop since 2017, boy, do I have a ride for you. You're going to go absolutely crazy over this one. This one has driven me totally batty. It's the most exciting thing I've ever seen in my life. And it would not have developed the way that it's developed if I was not sick, because I had a lot of time to just sit and run things forward and backwards and forward and backwards, and normally that's how things develop for me. Since I was a very young child, I was capable of seeing patterns. We'll just say that, and being able to see these patterns, and be able to pick up on patterns. I began to see how this flood asteroid was involved in um, a lot of the other signs that I was watching um, through the heavens, and it seemed to be connected with multiple other signs that I was getting with other asteroids and comets and planets, the sun, etc. It seemed to be that the storyline that we were looking for with the bride and the bridesmaids and the marriage in the heavens. It seemed to be connected with this birthing sign. And so I wanted to run forward and backwards and really take a good look at this flood asteroid, see where it was, see where it ends up, and run it forward to really get a deep grasp of what this asteroid was speaking in the heavens, and then also see if it matched up with some of the other signs that I've been watching. So it ended up being almost too much for me. And a lot of the times I don't get, I'm not shocked by a lot of these signs in the heavens anymore because I've seen so many come and go. It's not really so much a letdown as much as it is your excitement gets really pumped, and then the you don't see the things manifest the way that you think that they're going to manifest based on the signs, and that is sort of like a roller coaster ride. It can be very exciting, but sometimes there's some highs and lows in there. And so, if you've been a watchman and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But these things are undeniable because the pattern is prophetic, and we have to go back here to this date in order for me to build upon the evidence. So we're looking at the flood asteroid 4220 flood in the scales. This line coming out of Libra is essentially the scale line, and flood is going directly along that line, and then we're going to run forward and we're going to show you. But I wanted to point out that asteroid flood is here right at the time that Jupiter is crossing the Virgo Spica line, which is, we know this is the day that Jupiter was born from Virgo before the Revelation 12 sign. Now, keep your eye on flood. We showed this in the first part, but I want to make sure we re-emphasize exactly what we're looking at, because this is important to pay attention to. So then we end up um, here, and we're literally looking at flood inside of Theta Librae. And this is the star that is associated with the scales of Libra. And what do you know? The moon is literally right there sitting at the point where flood was on the 9th. So that is a really important part of these signs that we didn't point out from the last one. We did point out at this time in the alignment that the moon was there, but we have to look at the location of the moon. It's literally marking where flood was on the 9th, which is the birthing sign. Now we see Jupiter is here outside of the womb, and we see Vesta and the sun are in the Virgo constellation. And we have a very, very important sign in the heavens. It's literally marking Virgo and Libra, and we know that this is associated with our bride at the altar. Okay, so we just wanted to bring that back forward. It's going to be vital for the understanding of the rest of this part too. So what happened in my time off, what happened is I began to look at the patterns and again the connections with all of these other asteroids and comets, and it was literally like a symphony in the heavens. And that all of these things were literally playing to the same tune, that they were all essentially running the same. Um, it's the same song, and that this is all coming to a great culmination. And if they're all playing the same tune and the same song, then we're going to see very similar patterns. And sometimes, they're not all playing the exact same tune. And so there's all these beautiful differentiations within music that makes it so exciting, because everybody's playing a slightly different role. And that's exactly what I began to see is these patterns that continued to match what I was looking at in the heavens, and they continue to play forward from this 2017 mark with this asteroid flood. So what we're going to do now is we're going to enter into 2026. The last place that we were at was 2/23, 2026, when asteroid flood goes retrograde. Let's get flood centered back. Let's get up to 2026. And we're looking at today being the 5th. And what we're looking at here is flood in the Virgo constellation today, with the moon in the constellation, and it's in transition to Spica right now. We can go back and we can see we're looking approximately here currently as I'm making this video. We can see that the moon is in transition through the Virgo constellation, and it is headed towards Spica and flood. And if you have watched my series, the final scene decoded, where I'm looking at the iPet Goat 2, and I'm looking at the scenes where the boat and the boatman comes out of the womb. And I believe there's like 4 scenes. They don't show all the scenes complete, but I believe that there is 4 different scenes with the boatman coming out of the womb. And if you watch that series, then you'll know that I'm talking about the moon at Spica. And so we're looking at another month where the moon is about to pass the Spica star, and it's associated with our birthing. And we can see how asteroid flood is right there at this time, and it's in transition itself to marking the Spica star. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to show you how these signs are all associated with the flood. And we can look at this as being associated with the flood of Noah, and the scriptures talking about how they're not going to get any signs except for the sign of Jonas. And if you know anything about the Mazzaroth, then you know that that sign of Jonas is associated with the constellation Cetus. And that's the beast or the whale from the sea. And so when we're looking at this, we can associate these, uh, Jonas or flood signs, because that was, um, if you go back and you read that story, it was as if the ship was going to go down in the sea, and you come to a point in the story where uh, Jonas is essentially a sacrifice to save the boat, and he's thrown overboard and taken by the whale for 3 days and 3 nights. And so we can go over to, it's better to go this way. We can go here, and we can, let's go back to, I knew that would happen. Oh, it took it out here too. Unfortunately, with the way that, we'll just go ahead and click in here with what we do have. Unfortunately, fam, with the way that, this stellarium works, it keeps doing this to me. Um, but we're looking at today. We have Comet C2024 E1 Weir shows. And this comet is crossing the river today. So that's a very important sign for us to be watching. I posted the codes in the community section. I'm going to hold off on doing codes today because I'm trying to keep this a little bit shorter. We do also have, let's see if I can get this to come up. Forgive me, fam, but this, I believe, is the only way to get these. Here we go. Okay. So that's what I had to do lately, is just really scroll in, and then sometimes it will give me but I want you to pay attention to this, because I believe all of this is connected. These signs are just too much. They have to be connected. There's too much going on for them to not be connected. So, as we were watching in one of the other videos, the River of Fire, I believe that this Eridanos is depicting a tribulation sign. And we were talking about in that video how the hands of Cetus in a lot of the ancient art depictions are actually crossing the line of Eridanus, and when we were looking at that alignment of weird shows and maps at Eridanus, it looked like it was pointing to the hands of Cetus in the river Eridanus. And I believe that that was a warning sign of the coming tribulation. And now we're seeing weird shows cross the river, and then the very next day, which will be tomorrow, we have this alignment with C2026A1 map. And this comet is being talked about as a sun grazer that could hit the sun, and it's a huge comet. It could cause uh, problems, and there's not a consensus from the astrophysicists, and so we're getting a whole bunch of wild possibilities coming out from a whole range of astrophysicists. And so that is a warning in and of itself, but we're looking literally at comet maps going from the river of fire and now marking Cetus tomorrow. And this was a very, very serious sign to me, because when we go to the flood, we're going to just leave this now because this is where I want to move forward from. We know that these two comets are involved in our signs, and we know that Eridanus is a river. We can look at this as a river of water. We can also look at it as a connection to the underworld. And we can also look at this as a river of fire, and that Cetus is like the devil or Satan that's in the underworld connected. He's got his little dirty hands in this river, and it can be associated with these judgment signs. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to move forward to the flood, and we're going to be digging in deep with these signs that we're seeing in the Virgo constellation. And I want everybody to remember that we're looking at the same location in the heavens where we were looking in 2017 for the Revelation 12 sign. Now what we're looking at is connected with this Spica star. And what I found is some patterns that I want to bring forth. You're going to have to connect the dots with the final scene decoded, because I believe that there is a connection there to this Spica star being a sign of this birthing process, and that the moon is connected to this entire cycle of this birthing process with Spica. And this asteroid is going to show us that there is an encoded message in the heavens here. Now we're in 2026, and we're looking at 9 years after this 2017. It's almost 9 years coming up in September. It'll be 9 years. And we're looking now back in the same constellation. And we're on 3-6. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to move forward And we're going to be looking here. And I think I have it 12 hours off. So what I want to do is I want to see at the very beginning of the day tomorrow at approximately 2:33 a.m. Pacific time. What we're looking at is the moon essentially in the womb section of Virgo, even though it's not inside. The moon sometimes transits up above and below the ecliptic. And so we can see using the meridian where essentially the moon is located within the womb of or it wherever the moon is. If it's in the constellation, and we can look at that quickly here, the moon is inside of the house of Virgo. And if you use meridian, you can see where she's located within the house. And it also, as we've discussed in previous videos, meridian also can tell you a story whenever there's an alignment. You can look at those alignments as an additional aspect of the story. And if we look at the moon on meridian at this time, which is tomorrow morning at 2:33 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, we have an alignment here. So let's take a closer look, and we can see the moon is actually aligning with the Coma constellation. Now, if you've been following this channel, you know we don't use the Coma Berenice hairpiece. Um, I believe that's a distraction from what this constellation actually represents, which is the mother and the child, the birthing process. And it crosses inside of the womb of the maiden. And so we can see here that if you have been following me for a while, then you've already seen the images of the mother and the child. If you haven't seen those, then you can go look up Coma constellation, mother and child. And then it'll show you the ancient depiction of the mother and child before we have this, the Greco-Roman age is where we get a lot of the modern constellation images. And a lot of it has created some corruption that's hard for people to get past. And that's one of the jobs I've been doing, is making sure that we're looking at the ancient depictions or the ancient understandings of these constellations to make sure we don't miss some of the imagery and the signs and the meanings that are associated with these constellations. So we have the moon in Spica. Essentially, it's on its way there, and then we're looking at this flood asteroid. But again, moon on meridian with Coma. So to me, this sign tomorrow morning is a birthing sign. And I want to make sure we point this out. This is really important. When I'm looking at signs, I'm sort of weighing how important they are and whether or not they're not to begin showing the signs or incorporating them in my calculations. Sometimes things happen to where I actually start tracking day counts to see if there's any kind of pattern there. And the pattern recognition helps me to see if there's something there deeper than just um, looking at code or looking at placement, because that's one aspect of the story. What I've learned over the years doing this, excuse me, is that again, this is like a symphony, and it's not just about these daily signs of where these things are located. It's how they play a greater role in the song or the movie, because this is all like a great movie set, and each of these are actors within the movie set, and they all have a slightly different uh, part. And if you look at it from a musical perspective, it's like a different sound within the orchestra. And once I began to see things that way, everything really began to develop for my understanding. And so, if you're doing this kind of work, that may help you to grasp how deep this really goes, because I think they're all connected. And if you can see that connection, it can help you with understanding how prophetic this language is that's developing in the heavens. Then what we can look at here is I began to watch. Let's go ahead and center up on flood. I began to watch as the moon passes Spica on the 6th. I began to watch the phase of the moon. I wanted to see if there was any kind of encoded message there. What I found is that the moon, let's go back to, um, let's go here. When we get past Spica, um, I think this is it. So when we get past Spica, we're going to get off the flood for a minute. I want to get back onto the moon. And yeah, we're on. Okay. So here we are. We're on meridian past Spica now on the same day. This is tomorrow, just before 3 p.m. We're on meridian, and we're aligning with the other womb star now. Okay, we're on alignment with the other womb star connected to Spica, and we can scroll in, and we can see how Zeta Virginis is being marked by meridian by the moon. And this is the other womb star. The modern name is Heze, but this is Zeta Virginis. And we can see how the moon is aligned on meridian. And then what I wanted to do is at this time with this alignment tomorrow, 3-6, the phase is at 88%. So the moon is at 88 tomorrow at on 3-6 at 14:55, which is just before 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And this was a great sign to me, with the 88 sign. And what we're going to do is we're going to move forward and we're going to really pay attention to a lot of this celestial language, over this period of March. I want to really focus in on what the heavens are showing us associated with this maiden, because we've been watching all along. We've been watching the sun and the moon and all the planets and comets and everything pointing to Capricorn and now Aquarius. But we're keeping a very close eye on what's happening over here with Virgo, because I believe it's directly associated with these birthing signs and the flood, which is our Noah signs, and it can also be associated with the Jonas signs. As we've seen with these asteroids, we're looking at the flood being directly associated with these two images that we get that are based on water. So we're looking at another birthing sign here. And then we can move forward. And I want everybody to just pay attention. Let's get back to the flood. And what we're going to do is we're going to move forward. And we've got to go back to the moon. And we're going to be taking a really close look here. And we'll call that close enough. Let's just get a meridian. Okay. So this is 3:27, right before midnight. We're looking at moon, the bride, at Persepe, the beehive cluster, and it's also, if you've been doing your research on the Mazzaroth, then you know how important this is. This area of the heavens is one of the most important areas in the entirety of the signs. We have these two stars here on each side of Persepe, and they are seen as twin donkeys or two donkeys. And this is associated with the sign of Christ coming into Jerusalem on a donkey. And Persepe is known as the manger. It's also known as the beehive cluster. And there's actually multiple connections here with this location in the heavens. It's known as the seed barn. It's known as the house of sheep. It's known as where the innumerable seed is kept. It's a sign of the floor of heaven. There's a lot of mythology also that's associated with this constellation and the location and this Prasepe area or the beehive cluster. And so we have the moon, the bride transition through grazing the Persepe beehive cluster as if it's going in and grabbing a portion of the innumerable seed. And this is very fitting for a sign of harvest. And it can also be a sign of like the bridesmaids, similar to the Pleiades. There is a large group of stars here in Persepe, and this can be seen as the moon picking up some of those heavenly bodies for this coming great wedding in the heavens. And if you look directly to the right, you see Jupiter is still directly between the bride and the bridegroom. So we have the king planet sitting there in between the bride and the bridegroom still. And then we see on the 28th, if we go back, we see here on Meridian another sign, and this is the moon on Meridian in the crab's claw. And I like to use the scarab beetle sign of Cancer. It seems to do a better job of explaining the constellation because of that beehive cluster and all of the mythology associated with the constellation of Cancer. It fits much better as a scarab beetle that we know is associated with resurrection and we can see how the moon or the bride being in the claws or the hands of the beetle can be like a sign of resurrection. This can be like Cancer holding the moon in its hands, and it has just passed through the seed barn. We'll call it that. And we all know if you've been watching scripture, if you're looking for prophecy, if you're looking for signs in the heavens, then this can be a sign of the seed war in heaven. And that we can see this as the bride picking up some of the seed for the great wedding in heaven. And so this was very important heavenly language for me. Um, Next, we're going to forward to, and I think it's at that time. So here we are, we're at 4-2 on meridian just before the Spica line. And we're looking at the moon at 99% now. So we're looking at another encoded message. It was 88%. Now we're at 99 for those of you who know 99 is rapture. And so we've got some numerical codes that are playing out on 4-2 as the moon again comes to this spica line. And I want to just make sure we're pointing all this out. One of the things that I didn't point out, let's back this up. We have right here another sign in the heavens. We're looking at the moon marking Regulus on the 29th. So we have the 27th, the 28th, 29th. We're getting some very, very important signs in the heavens. This is now the moon at 89%, and it's in transition across Regulus. So we can see how the moon transitions across Regulus. It's not an alignment like we saw before, where the moon actually occulted Regulus. Now we're not seeing that. We're seeing the moon just below Regulus. And so these are very, very important signs for us to pay attention to before we get to this spica line here. And so now we're seeing here moon at 99% just before its full phase. And we're looking at it essentially marking or pointing us to this spica line again. And the moon's at 99%. And so what I began to look at is a lot of these codes developing out based on the signs. And so that these videos don't go too long, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just point out a couple more very important things as we look forward in 2026. Okay, so the first thing is this womb sign on 9/9/2017 is vital because that happens before the Revelation 12 sign. Okay, so we have to see a pattern here. We have 2/23/26. The flood goes retrograde in Virgo. And this is where we left off in part 1. And I believe that this is a marking sign. Let's go back to flood because I want to make sure we set everything up for this next part. So flood continues to move forward, and I want everybody to pay attention to this right here. So here we have flood, and this is flood now moving back to spica. So let's go back, and I want everybody to pay attention to this in 2025. Flood past spica, Okay, flood in 1230, 2025, flood past Spica, went retrograde, and then came back here to mark Spica again, this time closer, marking Spica. Okay? What is inside, if we look here, it's very, very hard to see, but if you can see her arm, the maiden's arm, inside of the hand of the maiden is the harvest sign, the sign of, some say wheat, some say grapes, there's a bunch of different signs that this equates to. Um, this can be mostly associated with a grain, a harvesting of grain. So we'll just say that we're looking at the flood at Spica on the 18th. And this is very important language as we move forward. We've seen the moon marking Spica. We've seen now flood marking Spica. And we have associated all of this with water signs and earthing signs. And we have to continue to uh, watch these signs moving forward because they're all associated. So now we're going to quickly go to, we're going to go here, and I want everybody to pay attention. This is very, very important language. So then what happens is the flood comes out of retrograde and enters, you can see here, it's entering the womb of Virgo. So now we're inside of the womb of Virgo, right at the hand of the maiden. And then we're going to move forward and we're going to show you now the flood marked here. Okay, we have the flood marking Spica with the moon right there. So this is 7/20, 2026, and we can watch how the next day, it's actually on the 22nd, we have flood at the birth line. So we went from flood outside in the house of Virgo, but it was far enough away from the maiden and the womb to where if you're not connecting the entire story, you're going to miss the signs. And so this works out to where now we're seeing this flood in the womb at the birth line, the spicus birth line, and we're looking at 7. Let's get this exactly. Um, okay, here we are. 7:23. Flood at the line, which is the birthing line, similar to what we saw with Jupiter, and all the planets come through this section of the ecliptic. and some of them are below, some of them are above. This is literally marking that birthing line here, 723. So it's important for us to be able to see how this asteroid is continuing this story within our maiden sign, which is it's associated with our wedding signs, and it's associated with the birthing, and it's associated with the child and this marriage. And so we need to look forward, backwards, to be able to see how all of this plays out. And now we are going to have to come back. I don't want these to be over an hour, and I'm trying to keep everything as easy to understand and give as much details. And so it takes a little longer for these things to develop. But I've got to do this so that it makes sense to the newcomers as well as the people who've been watching this channel for a long time. So we're going to come back in the next part and we're going to associate how this asteroid is literally marking a very specific encoded prophecy of the 1260, the 1290, and possibly the 1335 date count. And I checked and rechecked and rechecked and rechecked, and I continued to connect the dots with multiple of these asteroids and comets that all seem to be connecting together with this timeline. And so we're going to come back. We're going to connect those day counts. And we're going to come back and do a part 4. And we're going to connect how all of this is associated with the Anunnaki and these ancient gods and these ancient pillars and all of these ancient constructions all over the planet and how they are associated with what's about to rise from the sea. And if you've been following the Watchmen and you're well versed in scripture, then you know that there is a direct association with the rising of the beast from the sea with the escape of the bride or the called out ones. There is a direct association. So now what we're going to do right before we leave is we're going to go back to this sign here because this is really what is uh, this is vital language here that we're going to get into real quick. It's only going to take me a minute. Cetus is the sea serpent, the beast from the sea. And this sign here in the heavens, this constellation being marked by our map and being marked, I'm going to be showing you in part 3 a whole bunch of other signs that are coming up that are literally marking this constellation of Cetus. If we look here, Vesta at this time in July is literally entering into the Cetus constellation. And we're going to be discussing that. We're going to be discussing how Saturn is also in this constellation for a period of time. And we're going to be discussing how there's multiple other comets and asteroids that are all about to be entering into the Cetus constellation to continue this story of the beast rising from the sea. So thanks for coming. We're going to be back really soon. I'm just starting to recover from all the antibiotics and all the craziness. I don't want to get into it all because it's just, I don't want to go backwards. I'm going to try to move forward. We're going to try to get back on track. I'm behind with a bunch of videos, but I want to make sure everybody is on track with this beast from the sea that we can see manifesting in our physical realm right now. We can see this happening. This war is associated with this underworld and these ruling beasts that are trying to lead the world to a great destruction. So, thanks for coming. We will be back very soon. Much love, family.